All right, let's dive right in today. We're talking President Trump back in the White House. And, well, things are already getting pretty interesting.
Fascinating, isn't it? Just days into this second non-consecutive term, and he's already pushing the limits.
Yeah, and today we're zeroing in on one specific development. It's a big one. This is from the Videntis, January 24th, 2025.
Yeah.
Trump orders release of assassination files.
Oh, this is something he's been hinting at for a while now. Lots of promises on the campaign trail, big expectations.
Definitely. The article even points out that this fulfills a campaign promise. But come on, there's got to be more to it, right? I mean, We're talking about JFK, RFK, MLK Jr. assassinations. These events have had people captivated for decades.
It's a savvy move, politically speaking. Tap into those mysteries, the conspiracy theories, those figures who still loom large in the public consciousness. Instant headlines.
For sure. And it kind of reinforces that whole image of Trump as the outsider, right? The guy who takes on the establishment. The one willing to expose the truth, no matter how controversial.
Exactly, but there's another side to this. We have to think about the potential impact on public trust, on how we understand history. Releasing these files, they could either back up what we think we know or completely turn it upside down.
Right. What if there's a smoking gun in there? Something that definitively proves a conspiracy. What would that do to our understanding of these events? To the institutions involved?
It's a question worth asking. And think about this. The article mentions that over 3,000 JFK files are still unreleased. That's a massive amount of information, potentially groundbreaking, but also potentially a minefield.
Yeah, no kidding. A real balancing act between transparency and national security. I mean, some people argue that classified information, well, releasing it could compromise investigations or even national security itself. How much are we willing to risk for the sake of historical clarity?
Tough question. And the timing of this executive order is interesting too, don't you think?
What?
We're already in a time when trust in government is shaky.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, is this move going to erode that trust even more? Or is it an attempt at transparency, maybe even an attempt to rebuild some of that trust? Feels like a gamble.
It does, doesn't it? And then there's the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. angle to consider, Trump's nominee for health secretary. He's been pretty open about his skepticism of the official narrative surrounding his uncle's assassination.
Yeah, adds another layer to this whole thing. Makes you wonder if his appointment and this executive order are connected somehow. A way for Trump to show he's aligned with those who question the official story.
Could be. It's like they're playing chess politically. Every move calculated. And we, the public, we're trying to figure out the strategy. What are the consequences going to be?
Definitely. What's interesting is this kind of fits with Trump's approach to governing, doesn't it? He's always used executive orders to push his agenda, often bypassing Congress, the usual legislative processes.
He likes to have control the narrative. And with this executive order, he's not just shaping what's happening now, he's potentially rewriting history.
Makes you wonder what else he might do. What other norms, conventions is he willing to challenge?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got plenty to unpack with this executive order alone.
Right, there's a lot more to dig into. So we were just talking about this executive order, and it feels like, well, like a power move by Trump, right? Controlling the narrative, maybe even reshaping history as we know it.
And it goes beyond just history, right? These assassinations, they had a massive impact. Culturally, politically, their effects are still felt today. I mean, think about it. Releasing these files could reopen old wounds, reignite debates about, well, about everything. The Cold War, civil rights, you name it.
Yeah, definitely. The Videntis article, they quote Larry J. Sabato. He's the director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics. He says, there's always the possibility that something would slip through that would be the tiny tip of a much larger iceberg. Makes you think, what if these files, what if they contain something that completely changes how we understand these events?
Imagine the implications. New investigations, long-held beliefs challenged, maybe even social unrest. Take the JFK assassination, for example. Countless books, documentaries, conspiracy theories. What if these files reveal something that turns everything we thought we knew on its head?
It would be huge. A complete bombshell. And the consequences for the institutions involved, I mean, the CIA, the FBI.
Right. What if evidence comes out that points to a cover-up? Or a failure to act on, crucial intelligence? People would lose trust. Big time.
And then there's the whole issue of political manipulation. Who gets to decide what's released? What stays classified? Could this be used to, target political rivals, push a specific agenda?
Absolutely. There's a very real risk of cherry-picking information, finding things that fit a certain narrative, discredit certain people or groups.
Yeah. The article even quotes Adav Noti from the Campaign Legal Center. He says this whole thing is literally cashing in on the presidency. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is, and it gets to the core of this, potential conflict of interest. Is this truly about transparency? Or is Trump trying to, I don't know, exploit these sensitive events for his own gain?
And the article brings up another point, the possibility that all of this could just fuel more conspiracy theories.
Right, you can't ignore that. These events are already surrounded by so much speculation. Releasing these files, especially without context, without explanation, it could just make things murkier, harder to tell what's real and what's not.
And in today's world, with misinformation spreading so easily on social media, those conspiracy theories, well, they can take on a life of their own. And that can lead to real-world consequences.
Exactly. Think about QAnon, the January 6th Capitol riots. Misinformation is powerful. It can be dangerous. We have to be careful. Approach this release of information with a healthy dose of skepticism.
So how do we do that? I mean, as individuals, how do we navigate this whole thing? How do we sift through the noise and find the truth?
Well, I think it's important to remember that history is complicated. It's not always black and white. There are often multiple perspectives, different interpretations of the same events. We need to be open to different viewpoints.
And like we talked about before, critical thinking is key. Don't just take everything you read or hear at face value. Question things.
Yeah.
Look for evidence. Be wary of confirmation bias, right? Looking for information that just confirms what you already believe.
And don't be afraid to dig deeper. Go beyond just the headlines. Look for in-depth analysis from sources you trust. There are plenty of historians, journalists, experts who've dedicated their careers to understanding these events.
Yeah, the article also emphasizes the importance of context. These assassinations, they happened at a specific time in a specific place. We need to understand what was going on back then, the social, political, cultural forces at play.
Exactly. We can't view these events in a vacuum. We need to understand the bigger picture, the historical context. That's how we grasp their real significance, how they impacted the world we live in today.
So it's becoming clear that this executive order, it's not just about some old files. It's like opening a Pandora's box.
Yeah,
So many questions, controversies, potential consequences.
definitely. It's a reminder that the past, well, it never really goes away. It shapes us, even today, and it will continue to shape our future.
Well, we've covered a lot, but there's still more to explore. We'll be back in a moment to delve even deeper into the potential impact of these revelations and what it all means for us now. Okay, so we've been talking about the potential impact of releasing these assassination files, what it means for understanding history and how it could stir up old controversies.
Yeah, and what really strikes me is the power of information, right? I mean, these files have been hidden away for decades. It's fueled speculation, distrust. Releasing them, even with redactions, it could be a step toward, well, greater transparency, more accountability.
But it does raise the question, who controls that information? How's it presented to the public?
That's a really important point. The way these files are released, the context they're given, the narrative that goes with them, it could have a huge influence on how people interpret them.
Yeah, imagine if they released these files with like a curated website, documentaries, maybe even museum exhibits. That could really shape public opinion.
Absolutely. It's about framing, interpretation, whose voices are we hearing, whose perspectives are being left out, and what are the agendas at play?
Right. The Videntis article, they talk about this. Some historians are worried about, these files being used for political gain.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern. We've seen how easy it is to twist historical narratives, right?
Yeah.
To manipulate them to fit a certain agenda.
So how do we, as informed citizens, how do we protect ourselves from that? How do we learn to be more critical, more skeptical?
Well, I think we have to remember that history isn't set in stone. It's a conversation, always evolving. We should always be open to new information, different perspectives, even if they challenge what we think we know.
And like we said before, finding different sources of information. Don't rely on just one news outlet, one historian.
Exactly. Read books, listen to podcasts, engage with experts, experts who might disagree with each other. Challenge yourself to really understand the complexities, the nuances of these events.
It's like putting together a puzzle. Each new piece of information can help us see the bigger picture. But we have to look at all the pieces, see how they fit together.
And sometimes the pieces, well, they don't fit so neatly. There might be gaps, things that don't make sense, or even things that were left out on purpose. That's where critical thinking comes in. Question everything, analyze it, evaluate the information we're given.
And be aware of our own biases, right? We all come to these events with our own preconceived ideas. It's important to recognize those and to be open to having them challenged.
Absolutely. Being honest with ourselves, that's crucial. It's okay to change our minds when we learn something new. That's how we grow intellectually.
So it seems like this executive order, it's more than just a historical footnote. It's a reminder that history is alive. It still affects us. And it's our responsibility to engage with it in a thoughtful way, critically.
It's a call to action, a challenge to be more informed, more engaged, more discerning about the information we consume.
Because the past never really goes away. It's the foundation for our present, our future. And the choices we make today, well, they're shaped by the lessons we learned from history.
That's it exactly. Understanding the past helps us navigate the present, and it helps us create a better future, a more informed and just future.
That's a great point to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complexities, the controversies surrounding President Trump's executive order on the release of those assassination files.
It's been great discussing this with you.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. Keep exploring these issues, keep challenging assumptions, and keep seeking out different perspectives. The search for truth, for understanding, it's a journey, and we're all in it together.